What you will be looking at behind me in a few seconds is an adult casually smoking some cannabis, either recreationally or medically. Which is not a problem at all. As an adult, we should all be able to make our own decisions in regards to cannabis consumption and how you use it. But what my problem with cannabis is now the access to it that teens have. Now, what we will be discussing in this video is the potential adverse effects and side effects that cannabis can do to the teenage brain, and in particular, not even just the teenage brain, but if your prefrontal cortex has not developed completely, you are at risk for developing specific mental health illnesses. Now, once again, this video is not intended to bash on adult cannabis use at all. In fact, I'm an advocate for medical cannabis use and recreational cannabis use. My only concern is for teenagers, because once again, as stated, what happens if they have a bad experience younger using cannabis, resulting in something like psychosis, just something like that. So please, nobody take offense to this video. I'm not aiming at bashing cannabis. It's just discussing the true concerns I have in teenagers or even adults whose prefrontal cortexes are not completely developed, and the potential mental health illnesses that it can cause. Now, before I go any further, if you could please like and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate that. And if you feel so, please leave a comment and share with your friends and family. And this is your daily dose of mental health with Adam. Let's get into it. So let's first talk about how brain development and the brain in general in regards to how it is affected by THC, in particular teenagers. So, first question, can marijuana affect teen brain development? So what we essentially know up to this point is that there are some negative effects of cannabis on the teenage brain, and in particular the development of it. And in particular, the prefrontal cortex, which does not reach full maturity as stated until the early 20s, or even sometimes a little bit later, meaning that many complex processes of the adolescent brain are still in progress. There's a lot of neuroscientific research that indicates that during this time, teens are especially vulnerable to the effects of cannabis. Also, sometimes delaying or preventing the start of regular cannabis use in regards to doing it to adulthood can prevent long-term damage to neurons and ensure optimal brain health and functioning. And that's my whole point. Once again, it's not to bash cannabis. It's just to bring up some points in regards to teenage cannabis use and why it is really important for there to be more teenage cannabis use education out there, as stated by the prefrontal cortex. So essentially, kind of like what science right now is watching from this is, once again, we need more research regarding the impact of cannabis on brain development in general, and in particular neurocognition. In my opinion, too, we also need resources to help prevent and delay the start of cannabis use. So, how does cannabis affect teens' control of impulses and emotions? Next point brought up. Many times teen cannabis smokers often have less control, which can lead to unsafe behavior, which is true. The prefrontal cortex has everything to do with the emotions. There also has been some brain imaging that shows that regular users of cannabis have less gray matter. They have less gray matter than non-users, which gray matter it's coated on your brain essentially. And this region of the brain that contributes to impulse control as well as to the decision making and learning, that's where you have all your more of your gray matter. So people who smoke more cannabis have less of this gray matter. Additionally, results of multiple studies have found that teens who start using marijuana at a young age show less control of inhibitions, poor self-control, and impulse control issues. Once again, I'll hammer this home because the prefrontal cortex and other areas of the brain are vulnerable in the youth. Cannabis can reduce the impulse control and emotional regulation. So again, what I think and what I'm thinking of is, in regards to this, is the amount, potency, and length of use can make a difference, but what we do not, but still we don't know how much though. So essentially, we don't know how much of a role the potency and the length the user is using as a teen. We don't know how much, essentially, how much potency plays a role in the prefrontal cortex and the decision making. However, at the same time, since it's increasing right now, it'd probably be safe to assume that the more potent the cannabis is, the higher chance of having issues with it long term. Really though, in my opinion, the next step for research is to continue to study this and compare the effects of marijuana use on teen brains over time. So they're going to have a lot of long-term longitudinal studies to study these brains long term with it, which it's really hard to do because a lot of people don't want to do this. Unfortunately, today there are a lot of, how do I say this? There are a lot of people that are very close-minded, and it's like you're either pro-cannabis all the way or you're anti. There's really no middle ground with it, which we kind of need right now if you think about it. I mean, because, like as I've said, for me, I'm all for adult cannabis use. I'm all for it, which you do on your own time. I do agree that working a job, you should never be on the job stoned or anything like that. I'm 100% against that. But my big concern, as stated, is cannabis use in young adults to the teenage years. Let's go ahead outside of the brain topic now. Let's go ahead and discuss a little bit of the edible topic. Now, before I go any further, please like and subscribe to the channel. I greatly appreciate it, to the Daily Dose of Mental Health. And also check out my playlist in regards to how I'll be running 365 days straight, minimum of 3.1 miles. I'm going to be doing it every day. I'll be on day 13 tomorrow. Now let's jump right back into this video. Sorry, I've been jumping around from topic to topic. Let's jump right on into it. Love y'all. Now here's a topic too that I really want to hit on. Edibles. Cannabis edibles. Reason being how powerful they are. First and foremost, I've made videos on them in the past. You can check them out. But the main thing is the way you process them is completely different. When you eat an edible, first off, it is processed through your liver and then hits your bloodstream, which, depending on how much you eat, it can hit you really, really hard. And also, in regards to this, a lot of times people over-medicate because, with smoking, you feel it right away. Vaping, you feel it right away. You think, oh, okay, you take some cannabis, you eat a brownie or so, you end up like those cops. Well, you probably know what I'm talking about, that video where those cops are like, they're like, I ate too many brownies. Time is going really, really slow right now. Yeah, that one out there. Yeah, some crazy shit. But back to it. So with edibles, in all seriousness though, they're a lot more potent. They're processed differently. A lot of times, and this goes for adults too, they take one, they wait 30 minutes, they say they're not feeling anything. They take another one, let's say they popped a 10 milligram one, then they pop another 10 milligram one. Hour later, man, I'm kind of feeling it. They pop an extra, one more 10, and then about an hour and a half later, boom, that's when it hits them. And let me tell you, with that, the safety, the potency, and the quality of the edibles a lot of times are unknown until uniform regulations are established. And that's one thing that's good for adults in regards to getting it from a dispensary, right? And being of legal age, you typically know how much the edible is. It gives you the directions on the back. But you should always consult with a doctor as well. But when you're buying, when you're a teenager buying these edibles and stuff, even at smoke shops from friends, sometimes you don't know what's in them. Back in the day, stuff used to be laced with spice. And the thing is, I will say this, that with edibles comes a higher chance of developing psychosis. There aren't many studies on it, but I'll tell you this, working in the psych setting as an RN, At one of the first jobs I ever worked, a lot of times people would come in due to taking a THC edible and displaying psychotic symptoms. Wide variety of ranging from just staring at walls to not being able to function as a human, using the bathroom on the ground. Just it can be sad, but that I have seen more of, things like that. Now, this is where I don't want to get into that sticky ground where I'm not saying there's a correlation between teenage marijuana use and schizophrenia or severe mental health illnesses. However, the studies we need more of right now as well are potency, because I do believe with potency, even from 10 years ago when you had you had THC products that were no more than, they didn't have more than 15% THC. Now they're up to, they can, with the oils, even with the flowers up to like 25-30%. Sativa, indica, have that, times that by a lot when you eat an edible. I do believe that there could be some long-term consequences depending on the person using. And that's why adults should be encouraging their kids and giving them the rundown on THC products, and also be honestly letting them know if they have a history of family mental illness, because that does play a role as well. Also, there have been a total number of ER visits and poison control calls that are becoming a lot higher in regards to children calls, because they're getting into parents' stashes and whatnot. So they got to be really careful with. We got to be really, really careful with that. So that's one thing if you are using them as an adult, keep them stored in a proper place, locked away, please, because that can be an easy way for a child to get into it, an animal to get into it, anyone. Real quick as well, as I said, potency, huge. The potency is why I think we need more studies, but why we need to be more conscientious to our kids in regards to this, and tell our kids more about this as they age. Because no offense, the DARE programs, a lot of times they fail us. They have it where they're saying that cannabis is worse than cocaine and meth, and just things like that. That's not how you teach the youth about drugs in general, or in particular about cannabis. You lay them down raw facts, in my opinion. Lastly, to conclude this video, I know I got this out late, but I want to real quick talk about as well the serving size of an edible. What we know up to this point really is labeled and unlabeled packages of marijuana edibles can be confusing a lot of times. A single serving of marijuana infused edible may be labeled 10 milligrams of THC per serving, but a package of edibles may contain 10 single servings. This may represent the difference between one puff or 20 of a THC cigarette or a joint. If eaten all at once, the psychoactive effects, as stated earlier, may be slow to appear, but may be severe when they do. And that's what I'm telling you. Start low. Well, I'm not giving you any advice, but never just start taking them. If you eat a whole bag of those, not a good situation. One thing to watch for: the effects of cannabis edibles vary from person to person, as stated. That's why I'm not saying it's bad for some. It's bad for some and good for others, but I'm just saying you got to know your mental health history. You should be telling your kids this as well. So far, an average safe serving has not been established yet of an edible, especially for someone who doesn't use them often. It can be 1 milligram, it can be 2. It just depends. But one of the dangers that we've been seeing with adult recreational retail use is they'll take the recommended dose, wait, feel no effects, as stated, and then continue to stack the doses over and over and over again. Then before they know it, they have a huge amount in their system. It's processed by their liver, and then they get they can get very, very stoned first off, but have some pretty severe adverse effects, which can lead to some psychosis as well. I will below post some studies that I found in regards to teenage cannabis use. I know I didn't really go over them too much in depth, but I just wanted to give a quick rundown on it. And once again, this isn't hating on cannabis or promoting its use, and this is why it's a pretty sensitive topic for me to talk about, because I recognize how it helps so many, but at the same time, I'm not trying to promote it as being this bad thing either. That's why I had to be very careful with how I talked about it. But I do, in conclusion, believe that we need a lot more studies for teenage use and long-term studies on the brain, mental health disorders, and psychosis. I love you all. This is your daily dose of mental health. I'll have another video out. I'm not going to say what it's about. In about a week and a half. I love you all. I'll keep you updated. Check out that playlist I'm running every day. YouTube Shorts, the daily dose of mental health. I'm running at least 3.1 miles on day 13 for 1 straight year. Let's get it. Do what you got to do. Hustle. I love you all. Get your feet wet.